Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It's about that time during the offseason, spring practice wrapping up, largely the transfer portal winding down, where we take a look across college football and we try to find those teams that we're kind of going to stick our flagpole in heading into 2024, those teams that we like a lot more than probably the national media and consensus college football fans. One of our favorite episodes to do every single year. Fired up to get into it. Going to go conference by conference. Shout out a few teams that the boys are really high on heading into 2024. Before we get into it, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. It has been a blast taking deep dives into all of these programs over the last couple of months. Can't thank you guys enough for all the support. One, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly than subscribing, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Some teams that you really like, put them on the Rock Boys radar. Let us throw us a little bit of a bone, and then let us find some teams that we're going to make some money on heading into 2024. Would love to hear from you on Dill. I'm going to tee you up first. Let's start with the SEC. The team that Breakout, we're using that word extremely generously early, the Tennessee Vols. That's your team. What you got for us?
Oh, and I don't think this is like a breakout by classical standards, but I think people talking a lot about Ole Miss, talking a lot about Missouri, talking a lot about some of these other SEC teams that are kind of on the way up, let's say. I think we're sleeping a little bit on Tennessee. And again, I don't think people appreciate maybe the level at which Joe Milton was playing at last year and just kind of what he was bringing to that table in terms of running that hyper offense and being efficient in the way you want. If Nico plays really good, and we've seen him now in that bowl game, saw him in the spring game, look pretty sharp, can run the ball effectively. I mean, if he plays really well, they have everything else they need. You look, they have a good running back room, returning a bunch of guys in the offensive line and adding Lance Hurd, who is a monster, we all think, just behind two really good players at LSU. And then you bring in a couple guys in Chris Brazil, Mike Matthews, Brew McCoy coming back from injury. Squirrel White's still there. I didn't think he had the year that maybe we all thought he would have, but still really talented. This offense is great. Then you look at the defense. I mean, that defensive line really deep through the middle, and then you have your horses, James Pierce. To me, it's going to be 100% about whether the secondary plays a little bit better. And they brought in some nice transfer portal pieces, but if they play good, look out, because this team can compete with anyone in the SEC.
I think that this is a really good shout out. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, the teams of the offseason are Ole Miss, it's the Missouri Tigers, and you're sitting there with Tennessee. I think kind of an underwhelming performance in 2023 from the outside looking in. And you kind of look at boxes that you want to see checked heading into 2024. Quarterback play. I mean, Big Nico, a guy that we absolutely love from high school, seems to be a perfect fit in terms of what Josh Heupel wants to do on the offensive side of the football. He's going to have an offensive line, a lot of experience, a lot of talent on that offensive line, obviously surrounded by a lot of talent too. I can see it. And I think this Tennessee team kind of flying under the radar because
I think there's the element of Tennessee's not as heavy in the transfer portal, but like, let's be honest, they recruit at a higher level than, let's say, in Ole Miss or in Missouri. So there's different ways to do it. Tennessee's been recruiting really well. I think, again, they're only 1 year removed from that Alabama win where we felt like, oh, Tennessee's here. Again, Joe Milton didn't work out at Tennessee at the end of the day. This is still a really good team. I think the bones are really, really strong. I think they're going to have a really good year.
All right, next up in the SEC, my kind of breakout team. I think a team that I don't necessarily know if I'm picking them to win the SEC right now, but a team that I think takes a massive step from where they were 12 months ago. That's the Auburn Tigers. You look at where Auburn needed to get better. I think they got better at every single spot. It's no secret that the recruiting is going in the right direction. This depth chart is just massively improved, and it started with the pass catchers, right? You have Peyton Thorne coming back. We've always banged the table. Like, if you give Peyton Thorne some talent, he is going to make it happen. He did it at Michigan State. In 2023, he just didn't have the talent. I think even a lot of Auburn fans wanted to write Peyton Thorne off. You look at the wide receiver room now, true freshman Cam Coleman looking like a year one impact guy. Keandre Lambert-Smith, the guy that we both love coming from the Big Ten. You bring in guys like Robert Lewis. I look at this Auburn team and say, it won 6 games last year. I think it took a massive step in the right direction at the spots it needed to take those steps. I think they did a great job in the transfer portal. Give me them Auburn Tigers to take a massive step in 2024.
And they'll get really interesting if they have some of their young guys on defense play really good football, because that's kind of what you'll look. I mean, they're really kind of young at certain spots on defense, have a fair amount of experience to tie in with that. But man, if they reach their peak, it's going to be some of those young guys playing really good, really early. We kind of got to see a little bit of that in the spring game. I think they have some guys who can make some differences. So, again, to me, I think, again, Peyton Thorne with a full season, I think will help a lot. Obviously, came in last year late in the spring window and being there the whole time. And then obviously your young guys start to kind of filter through this program and bring a different level of talent.
So when I look at Auburn, I think you kind of hit it on the head and maybe why they're kind of being slept on by the national media. Not a lot of people cover the recruiting trail like a lot of the I'm not going to say real college football fans, but the sicko college football fans, if you will. I mean, this Auburn team is going to have a lot of true freshmen that are going to be impact performers for them in 2024. A lot of faces that a lot of college football fans won't recognize till about midway through October. And I think that's why they're getting slept on a little bit. They'll moving to the Big 12, which is, I mean, really just the Wild West in terms of trying to predict what's going to happen. I'll get out in front of this and say I don't condone this. My brother's rocking with the Baylor Bears. They'll let you try to sell us all on the Baylor Bears here.
And I think if you look, Baylor's offensive line has hurt them for the past couple of years. I think it's really struggled. When they were good, that offensive line was humming. They're returning a fair amount of it. And that, again, that kind of has two sides of that coin. Like, one, they didn't play great football last year, but they are returning a lot. They're going to be more experienced. If you kind of believe in Dave Aranda's development, like I do, I like the fact that they're going to return a lot of that. I think they have some high impact guys on the defense. I think you look at a guy in Garmin Randolph, really, really good player. I think Matt Jones, very good player. And then two safeties who are about as good. I think they'll be right up there with anyone in the conference. I think this Baylor team is going to return a lot more than people think. I think if their offensive line gets better, DeQuan Finn coming in, I think sets up to run that offense pretty effectively. I just think people are sleeping on Dave Rand. I love what he's done. Had a couple bad years. He's down a little bit, and people are kicking him. They're coming out for
Buy your stock.
He's going to come back fighting. He's going to get it done this year.
You buy the dip, Dill. It's why this Baylor team, I mean, less than 24 months ago, I had him in my top 10 coaches across college football. Now I think he's on the hot seat heading into 2024. I mean, my question is, you know how Dave Aranda wants to do it. You look back at the blueprint of when this Baylor team had a lot of success under him, line of scrimmage play. And I just look at the line of scrimmage play and say, I don't see a dominant team along the line of scrimmage. That's why I have the questions. I don't think you're picking Baylor to win the Big 12, but maybe get to a
no, but that's like you're like, I mean, I feel like everyone's talking about your Utahs, your Kansas States, your UCFs now. I mean, I just think Baylor's going to be a lot more competitive. I think people think Dave Rand is dead. I think they think he's going to be gone. I think he's going to come back and have kind of a Baylor year. I'm not picking them to win the conference, but I think they're going to be a very competitive team compared to what you've seen last year.
You can file me under the Dave Aranda dead. Not physically dead, probably out of Baylor in the next 12 months. Still, perfect segue into my Big 12 team. That's UCF. And I look at this offense and say, this offense was one of the best rushing attacks you saw in the country last year. It only gets better. You bring in KJ Jefferson, a guy that I think KJ Jefferson gets a bad rap from Arkansas in 2023. That offensive line was absolutely brutal in a conference where you can't be brutal in. You go to UCF with the coach in Gus Malzahn, who is going to use KJ Jefferson the way KJ Jefferson should be used. RJ Harvey, you add Penny Boone, you look at the outside, a guy like Kobe Hudson, I think can be a day 2 pick 12 months from now. And then on the defense, you make a lot of additions in the transfer portal. It's a good recipe when you can run the football on just about any team that you're going to play. You play some solid defense. That's going to win you a lot of games in the Big 12. And in a conference where I don't think there's that elite caliber team, if you run into UCF and they're having a day on the ground, like they're going to be a very hard team to deal with in 2024.
And they've put themselves on the map, especially in the spring portal window. They've done a lot of work. They've added a lot of really nice pieces. And again, like I guess like 2 years ago, me would think like, oh, this is their transfer team. They're building only through their transfer. They don't have that foundation in place. But again, you saw them play pretty good football last year. I think they're building something. I love Gus Malzahn. You know, I think, again, he probably ran his course at Auburn, but he had a really, really good tenure at Auburn. So he's a great, great head coach. I mean, I'm with you. I don't know that this is a breakout team in the way because, I mean, everybody and you are thinking they're going to be really good, especially with their portal window. But they're going to be really good in the Big 12. They're going to be right there with everyone else.
The Big 12, you could pick for just about any team in the Big 12, probably outside of Arizona State, although I'm a Kenny Dillingham guy and say they're going to make a run in the Big 12. Like, it is, huh?
They might be coming a little bit.
They might be. I'm not on Kenny Dillingham. In fact, I'm very in on Kenny Dillingham, but the Big 12 is going to be a wild conference. Like, pretty much anybody can beat anybody on any given Saturday. Dill, going to the ACC, this is a very popular team, but consider the Rock Boys, both of us, very on top of them. The Virginia Tech Hokies, who pretty much return their whole roster from last year. Dill, the most intriguing part is you can just feel Brent Pry turning the corner with this program and kind of getting his culture in place going into year 3. I look at this Virginia Tech team and say, played really good football down the stretch in 2023, returned pretty much that whole roster, made some really sneaky additions in the portal with guys like Aeneas Peebles up front. This is a team that, you talk about the top 3 teams with Clemson, Miami, and Florida State. You got Virginia Tech. You got a team that I'm about to talk about in just a little bit. You got the Louisville Cardinals right on their heels, very competitive in the ACC. What you got on Virginia Tech here?
No, and you know I'm a Virginia Tech guy. They just started to play the right way towards the end of the year. And again, they made a lot of mistakes, it felt like last year at very inopportune times. But when they started to play good, and especially at home when it was rocking, one of those Thursday or Friday nights I remember doing it. And like, man, Virginia Tech might be back. Like, this environment's back. There's energy. They're playing physical. They're getting sacks. They're just doing their thing. That's how you want them to look. And I think you're right. The fact that they kept that nucleus together, I mean, bodes really well in this kind of era of college football. I think Brent Pry is building something. I think guys want to be there. They want to play there. The energy's back. I think they're primed to have a big, big year.
I have to apologize to Virginia Tech fans. I always grew up thinking Va Tech was an acceptable way to abbreviate Virginia Tech. I learned about a couple months ago, they don't like that. And I forgot about that. That's a little old habit that I'm trying to kick. Virginia Tech should be on that banner. Virginia Tech fans, I apologize for it. Won't make that mistake again. Love the team heading into 2024.
That Syracuse game, that's the game I was thinking about. That had me sold on Virginia Tech when it was rocking.
You get Virginia Tech Friday night, like in Blacksburg. Dangerous team. Next team I want to talk about, NC State in the ACC. This is a team that they did the Brennan Armstrong experience last year. Obviously didn't work. I look at this offense. I watched the spring game and say Grayson McCall, great command of the offense. You have a ton of weapons surrounding Grayson McCall, right? Noah Rogers coming in the portal. Kevin Concepcion, a guy, one of the best playmakers in all of college football. You grab Wesley Grimes from Wake Forest. Dill, I look at this offense and say, massive step in the right direction. I trust the offensive line play. Then I look at defense and say, yeah, you lose some guys. Peyton Wilson being a stud. I trust Dave Dorn, Tony Gibson to have a really good defense. If this offense took a step yet last year, that was one of the most dangerous teams in the ACC.
And this is another team kind of a little bit sort of like my Baylor take is they're returning a lot of guys on the offensive line, a unit that, again, I don't think played exactly to the standard of what we expect at NC State. I expect those to be one of the better ones in the conference. They were okay last year. I think, again, a unit that can get a lot better, returning a fair amount of guys. You bring in Zeke Krell from Notre Dame. If this offensive line plays really good, they have a different level of weapon now than it feels like they've had in a little while. So, again, always play really good defense. If they can score like the way their weapons say they maybe should score, this will be a really dangerous
You look at that team last year, went 8-4. It went 8-4 with an offense that couldn't push the ball down the field. You bring in Grayson McCall, a guy that I was a massive fan of during the winter portal window. You bring in a ton of weapons. You return a guy like Kevin Concepcion. I think they got better in the area. And that's kind of the bones of this conversation. You look at teams that were solid last year, but got better in the spots that they need to get better. And I think NC State falls into that category. I think Auburn fell into that category. Really high on NC State. The last one, going to the Big Ten, kind of interesting conversation because I think a lot of Big Ten fans and college football fans look at this conference and say, you got Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, and probably Penn State, and say that's kind of the clear four. And what team is going to emerge as that other contender? You have USC, you have Iowa, Wisconsin. Dill, we went with Nebraska. Very similar conversation. Elite defense last year. Couldn't push the ball down the field. Couldn't really move the football on offense last year. They get better, dramatically better, and a lot of those spots you're looking for heading into 2024.
Yeah, I mean, in this, a lot of this will rest on Dylan Raiola's shoulders. I mean, the quarterback play was clearly not up to snuff last year. They added the weapons I think they needed to add, returning a lot of those guys up front, a unit that, again, one of those units that really built from the first game to the last game in the college football season. When you have that, you add Micah Mazakua from Florida, a really good player. This offense should be really good. I think that Dylan Raiola is coming into it, frankly, a better situation than I think a lot of people think, where it feels like, oh, he's just coming into this barren wasteland. No, this is a pretty good team. If he plays good, look good in the spring game. Not that you can take that's the end all be all or anything, but if he plays that way, you know this defense is going to be good. They played really good last year. And Nebraska can go challenge those other teams. And again, I'm not necessarily picking them to jump into that top 4 yet. I think that top 4 still has a bit of a gap, but Nebraska does feel like they're going to be the team, if any, is going to be right on the heels.
Yeah, Nebraska, I am fully drinking the Kool-Aid with the Nebraska Cornhuskers heading into 2024, which is nothing new. Drank the Kool-Aid last year, drank the Kool-Aid in 2022. I'm going to get it right at some point. 2024 might be that year. Dill, those are the teams that we have. Again, one thing importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. I think we're going to run a few of these kind of breakout teams, the teams that the boys really like heading into 2024, trying to find those win totals that are a little bit free heading into 2024. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, again, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.